In last week's episode, Gary packed up all the animals the government had decided were dangerous to human health and safety.
If one tiger kills a person, then they ban all exotic animals. So I don't get their way of thinking, really.
The BC SPCA had pushed for this regulation, but it was conservation officers from the Ministry of the Environment that enforced it.
I think there needs to be regulations, but they need to be in a proper order, and they need to be worked out for the right people to have these animals and the wrong people that shouldn't have them. You know?
It was not the ending we had expected when we first started filming this story in the spring of 2010. Gary had called me to say that he was in danger of losing 22 of his animals because of the new regulation.
So this hasn't happened yet?
No.
Is this going to happen?
It's going to happen probably this week or the beginning of next week. So,
I'm not an animal rights advocate. I'm a writer and filmmaker, and I'd become interested in what happened to Gary after being contracted to write his biography 5 years before. A major film company wanted to feature Gary in a television series, and the book was intended to raise his profile in advance of the series. Like many great ideas, the series never happened, and the book didn't get published. But Gary and I spent many hours recording his life history, and I became fascinated with his life. He's a great storyteller, and he's led a life full of adventure.
And I knew it was serious. I knew there was many feet left on this snake, and I couldn't let the snake use the rest of his body to coil around my waist or my neck, or I'd be history.
All of which is captured and finally published in this book, which is being launched with this web series. Anyway, back to this story. Gary was given 9 months to find a way to either keep the animals or find another home for them. If he couldn't do that, Fish and Wildlife would take them, and they would undoubtedly be killed. My teammate Kate and I began to track Gary's efforts to come up with some kind of a solution. You've seen these efforts documented in the past 11 episodes in this series, from negotiations to join forces with the Greater Vancouver Zoo that didn't work out, to moving the entire zoo to a new and better location in the hope that he could get accredited so he could keep and show the animals. The new location still needed work, particularly insulation in the area where the gators and caimans now had to be kept. But everything was looking up when an early cold snap spelled disaster. All 4 of Gary's caimans died, and when a disgruntled employee reported this, Gary was investigated for cruelty to animals. Next, he was put through a grueling inspection involving all relevant law enforcement agencies. And then finally, the end no one ever expected, he had to give the animals away.
I have never had such a bad year.
On top of everything, the SPCA convinced Gary to give up 32 of his animals that fell under the Wildlife Act.
They were saying things would be a lot better for these animals if I cut the numbers down and I didn't have an overwhelming amount of animals to take care of at the same time as trying to rebuild this place.
And you actually agreed with
I agreed with it, yeah.
So Gary gave up the animals and turned his attention to making improvements in the new space. SPCA did a follow-up inspection and gave rave reviews. The place is looking good.
on this one here too, Curtis, it's in there, see?
In addition to the many volunteers who help care for the animals, Gary now has 2 full-time staff.
Let's do monotremes and marsupials tonight. Does anybody know what a monotreme is, by the way?
His career training school is back up and running again.
Already my school is picked up. We had 6 students to start with in the beginning of our school.
Students learn a broad range of topics in the school, including zookeeping, animal wrangling, wildlife and pet photography, massage therapy, and pet breeding. Brian Musell is one of his former students.
In a way, he inspired me to be more connected with the animal world, and I appreciate it because it brought me to Cinemazoo. It's going to bring me to a zoology degree, and it's just going to keep getting me higher with the world, and I'll be able to make a difference for the animals.
And after a slight dip, Gary and his animals are back in demand by schools and seniors and scouts and libraries. Apparently, people just love animals, whatever they are.
Okay, this year, what we have here is called an alligator snapping turtle. They're the largest species of snapping turtle in North America.
When he's not doing presentations, Gary's guiding tours at Cinemazoo, doing what he loves best, telling people about the animals and why they're so interesting.
Basically, they don't move. Once they're in camouflage in the bottom of the pond, they won't move for up to a year, as long as they're getting food.
However, despite all this good stuff, the SPCA is still charging Gary with cruelty to animals.
They turned around on their last visit and said 2 thumbs up. They thought the place was excellent. The animals were in really good shape and condition, and they said, we're really pleased with what you've done, but we're still having to file charges against you for animal cruelty. And I said, take your best shot.
So, in order to avoid further dealings with the SPCA as much as possible, and also to be able to use the cooler area in the back of the new location, he plans to shift the focus in Cinemazoo.
We're going to focus strictly on education, on conservation for exotic animals, but also education on domestic animals. Cows and sheep and goats and pheasants and chickens and things like that, and let kids come in. It's sort of like an educational petting zoo where they don't walk amongst the animals, but they get to learn about them and see them and pet them over the fence type thing.
And his focus on domestic animals extends to the work he gets wrangling as well.
Here we are at the Sheridan Hotel Wall Center, and the crew getting the cows ready to go up and do their walkabout.
So all in all, Gary's feeling pretty good these days.
2010 was the biggest hurdle I've ever had. If anything could go wrong, it went wrong in that year, but this year has already started off 100%
Typical
better.
of Gary, when one door closes, another one opens. It looks like this might be the next new door for Cinemazoo, but for Gary, it's not the last one. Still before him is his goal of establishing an ecology center. It's always in front of him, always on his mind.
I want to create a facility that's going to live long after I'm gone, providing education about animals, providing conservation for animals.
Like I wanted to have my own theater and my own seminar halls, my own nature clubs, my own junior zookeeping course.
I still have my ecology center in my mind, who knows, maybe if this place can prove to financial backing that it's viable, that they may want to sponsor me.
Well, now it looks like finally this dream is on its way to become a reality. Gary's getting support from the municipality and from his local Chamber of Commerce.
It's nice to have other people believing in your dream, it really is. And I think this is the first time this has ever come about. I just kept believing in it and thinking about it and going over in my head umpteen times about how am I going to do this, and now I can start seeing some light at the end of the tunnel.